Hello and welcome to the Mustardseed Realms podcast. My name is David Liberto, the founder of Mustardseed Realms, and this is episode 5. We're going to talk with Flower83, otherwise known as Flower, a citizen of Neo Tokyo, a NFT community. On the last episode, I discussed the concept of digital collectibles or NFTs and explained a lot about the definitions. This episode, I would like to especially delve into the purpose or the utilities of NFTs, and especially within Mustardseed Realms. Mustardseed Realms is primarily an entertainment company that specifically produces content in the form of epic fantasy novels at this particular time, but we would also produce short stories, videos, and video games, all within the speculative fiction genre, including fantasy, science fiction, science fantasy. If someone took the time to engage our stories, such as reading a book, reading a short story, playing a video game, watching a video, I wanted to offer them something akin to a badge for having given their time to enjoy that story and enjoy that content. The NFT collections that Mustardseed Realms will be offering will be structured in a way that if you engage the story in a meaningful way, as opposed to just a superficial glance, you will get a free digital collectible that aligns with that experience. So if you dive into the pool and swim, you get the free collectible. If you just dip your toe in and are kind of looking at the pool, you have to pay. Not only will the technology serve as evidence of your participation in the infancy of the Mustardseed Realms experience, but you can also use the associated digital collectible for many other things, including discounts in the Mustardseed Realms marketplace and economy, access to future Mustardseed Realms NFT collections. You will also be able to use the digital collectible as a tool to build your own character that could participate in the Mustardseed Realms lore universe, but definitely in the Mustardseed Realms community. So to be clear, when we release the first story, our first book, on November 15th, we will also be releasing 2 NFT collections. One collection will be a small collection of 500 pieces only, and that collection will be available to those who have read the story and accepted the challenge with the hope of getting a free reward. That particular product line will have the utilities mentioned above, including access to the discounts, access to elite nerd areas of membership within the community. It'll offer proof of participation. The faster you acquire the NFT, the better. I'm just going to say that. It'll offer access to future NFT collections and some utilities that I can't mention at this time, as the focus of this particular collection is to deliver a product. There will be levels of rarity, and when you acquire or mint the NFT, you will not know what rarity you will receive initially until the NFT is revealed. But I will tell you that the quicker you complete the challenge and read the book, the greater the chance that you will receive higher tier or more rare digital collectible. The second collection will be capped at 1,000 NFTs. Each collectible will have a cost that is comparable to purchasing a book, and the collection will have the same utilities as the smaller and free collection. This is a traditional approach in the Web3 community where you will have to work to acquire the NFT. You can either engage the content and participate in the challenge, or with a separate collection, you can simply pay a small fee. The art for the 2 collections will be different, even though utilities will be similar, though there will be some distinctions. So let's meet Flower83, otherwise known as Flower, a Neo Tokyo citizen, an S1 citizen to be specific, as there's different levels of rarity within that particular NFT collection as well. In June of last year, 2022, Flower joined the news team at Neo Tokyo and the Lore Council as an S2 citizen, and he worked really hard and saved and acquired his S1 citizen late last year. He is the man behind the NFT Tuesday articles. He is also a legend in providing updates on the Web3 market and communities. He is instrumental to the Neo Tokyo lore development as well. As a side note, I personally believe that Flower is without a doubt one of the most powerful sleeper agents in Neo Tokyo, and he truly qualifies to be called a legend. Now let's jump into the interview with Flower, where we'll discuss the Web3 community, the utilities found within NFTs and their respective communities, and a whole host of other topics that we just kind of branched off into. All right, here's the interview. All right, everyone, thank you for joining us. As I discussed, we have Flower from Neo Tokyo. And wanted to say thank you very much, sir, for coming on. I really appreciate it. And thank you very much for working with me with all the technical difficulties coming into the episode here.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.
No worries. So we're just going to jump right in and talk about NFTs. Now, as discussed, NFTs are sometimes called digital collectibles, depending upon who you talk to and what group you talk to. As I've mentioned, we've given a basic understanding of NFTs and the structure behind them and Web3 in general. We talked about Neo Tokyo as well and where Flower comes from. So today we're going to really dive in and discuss a lot of questions about the application for NFTs, not just the definition. So we're just going to real quick jump into this. The first question for you is, in what unique ways have you seen NFTs being used that are kind of move beyond typical art or the general collectibles market?
Yeah, so there's what I'm noticing two primary ways, I think. One is a bit more like corporate, or it's building an actual product behind it, and treating the project as a real company. And the other is more based on what NFTs seem to be about these days. It's based on hype and speculations and what people refer to as emotional utility. That's a term that's thrown around these days. So if you look at it like historically, initially NFTs were meant as collectibles, I think, and now the sentiment is in fact shifting toward the what you mentioned. They're being called digital collectibles instead of NFTs more and more, since NFTs kind of developed this negative connotation around them, and now many like mainstream brands are just going with the term digital collectible. But back in the punk era, I assume, I don't know, I wasn't around there. Like it was like this: some new tech emerges on Ethereum, and people like start experimenting with it, and then people start forming communities around it. So at first it was quite organic, I think, or as things should be. And it was like this: we have this picture or the idea that it represents, and we want to hang out or just connect with people who think the same way or have this in their wallet. And then the idea of forming a strong community almost forces a kind of natural progression these days. And it invites opportunity to create some, like, as you put it in your question, unique ways, to use the NFT beyond just the art itself. So, like, the most obvious and most widely used, or even perhaps the simplest way, I think, is token gating the Discord servers. And people put some alpha channels, some tools, some giveaways, and other benefits behind the NFT that you own. So yeah, like I said, I personally see two different ways in which NFTs are moving beyond just the typical art or collectibles. One category, I guess, are the ones delivering tangible products, like real world use cases. For example, Neo Tokyo as a networking group, or Steady Stack as this master traders, and for passive income, or Non-Fungible Arcade is another like project that comes out of Neo Tokyo, and they're this gaming hub where you can earn by playing their games. And the other, which I think is actually more successful these days for some reason, it seems like that those are the projects whose whole point is based on this elusive notion of good vibes or community or what. Yeah, I'm serious, like what people call emotional utility. And for some reason it's working, perhaps, like I said, it's working even better in some ways. And these are the projects that don't really have like this daily value in terms of services or stuff they do, but And the projects in this group would be D-Gods or Azuki or Pudgy Penguins, and lately those Miladies are popping up everywhere. And also, to some degree, Bored Apes actually started off like as this PFP for status flex, right? Though they are also branching into gaming and the metaverse.
Emotional utility. This is almost like a catchphrase, or a hot phrase right now. This is a big deal. Can you take just a second and explain what that means?
Yeah, it's um, like some people say that there's transactional utility, which is the NFT has its component that can be, it can be staked. You can yield passive income off it. You can get tokens. You can get whitelists, merch, or whitelists to upcoming drops from the collection that you're holding. And there's also a whole new brand of it. And yeah, this term actually stuck with me quite a lot because it kind of represents what the NFT is about right now. And it's just this notion of community hanging together for its own sake. It doesn't have to be more than that. And some collections actually have the bulk of their value in just the friendships, the connections they make. And it doesn't have to, they don't get anything other than good times, basically, from owning the NFT. Yeah, that would be a short summary of it.
No, that's fine. So, again, my question is, how is this concept that you're describing, and you describe it very well, how does this concept differ from a couple of guys walking into a Star Wars movie, loving the lore, loving the movie, loving the experience, and then walking out and leaving, and then going either on to Reddit or their own little Discord group? What is the difference between a situation like that and these NFT groups?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there is much of a difference actually, because you do have like a lot of online communities that are based off Web 2, and there's Patreon, there's Twitter groups, there are Discord channels, and the NFT just, I guess, represents that the ownership or your participation in these groups can be tradable, or it's a much more decentralized way of participating in some of these communities. Because, you know, some NFTs really are about like just hanging out and stuff, and then some people figured out the way to, I guess, tokenize that, and then the floor price and like the financial aspect of it kind of reflects the quality of the experiences and the stories, or sometimes like lore or storytelling behind it. It's like a measure of how much fun the community is having. And when these people who own some NFT from a certain collection then show up on social media, they all vibe with the PFPs they have, and it creates like this sense of bonding and stuff. But yeah, in its essence, I don't think it's needed. Like, you can also achieve a similar effect with Web 2 technology, basically. NFTs are just kind of like an extension of that, I think.
And just to make sure that people understand, token gated. This is a concept that means that once you have acquired the NFT, whatever the cost is, there are certain ways that, or certain programs and software that allows you to get into the community, or certain levels within certain tiers within the community, based on whether or not you have a particular NFT. When we say token gated, this can apply to many different levels within even a particular community. Not only that, though, the emotional utility that Flower has been really discussing well, again, this camaraderie, a lot of it, I think, depends upon the actual community that's in that particular project. Just as like a subreddit can sometimes have a very passionate and devoted following, certain communities can have this same, passion. And then obviously there's sometimes, or we're in a bear market, and for those that may not know, that's basically where the market is not really hopping. There's not a lot of activity. The prices of tokens and of NFTs have gone down, and there's not a lot of trading that's going on. But at the same time, there's still these communities that are inside of these projects. They're still thriving. They're still moving. Neo Tokyo, again, being a good example of one. But then there's separate communities that have spun off from Neo Tokyo that also have amazing communities. You've already mentioned Steady Stack as well. You have access to people that you may not have had access to before, and you can leverage is people use leverage in ways I don't think they should, but you can leverage that ability, that community, those relationships to help you move forward either in the business or with the community itself. And I totally hijacked that part of the conversation, but I thought it was important to point out. And I really think you did an amazing job of not only bringing it up, but explaining it. So thank you.
Yeah, but also, no, it's appropriate because this dynamic that you described, like it can be seen across various NFT collections. Like, for example, Azuki have their own Spirit DAO, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they just form communities based on trades from their PFPs. And some Discords also layer their channels in ways that your NFT that you hold, the rarity of that NFT, dictates what areas of the Discord you can access and which are closed off to you. So this kind of reflects, this real world, or how within a company you have like this. The CEO or various positions underneath him. And in a similar way, a lot of these discords and communities have found a way to hang with like-minded people, but also it creates this dynamic where they want to, in a sense, climb the ladder,
Sure.
So like one of the goals for me this year is to actually get into the elite channels within Neo Tokyo, because I started off as S2, like you mentioned, and when you take a look around in the Discord and you found value for yourself or other divisions and all the stuff that people are working on, you really are tempted to just increase your exposure to the project you're up, because you vibe with it that much more. So this is a good thing.
It is a good thing. Some people, and my goal is not to be contentious, but I do want to bring it up. Some people would disagree, and I do want to give the voice in this conversation in the sense of they would say that having those tiers being token gated, but basically money. You honestly have to have that extra money in order to be able to move up into the next tier. Some people would argue that that is not a decentralized approach. Now, I'm not saying that in particular. I'm fine with it, and that's one of the reasons why I'm part of Neo Tokyo, because I understand the rules, and why I'm part of other organizations or other Web3 communities. I understand the rules. I understand the tiers. I understand that if I want to move up, that I'm willing to pay that money. But this kind of branches off into a whole separate conversation, which I don't know if we'll go into, but the whole concept of gamers, where they would sit there and say, well, I want to have, I purchased and I got into this game, and I made, for right now, the Legend of Zelda game, right? No, that's not necessarily a good example, but basically one of these AAA games where you pay 60 or $70, you have the content, or you should have access to all of the content, where in some games, in order to advance or move forward, you have to actually pay more, either through microtransactions or DLCs or whatever it may be. There's obviously a huge community out there that would sit there and say, I don't like that. I want to have access to the entire community, and I don't want to have to pay more for it. I don't see why I should have to. So this incentivization.
In a sense, it's like gamifying. Yeah.
Incentivization.
It's like it's the whole game. It's like the participation becomes gamified in a way. And this can be observed like in MMORPGs, I think, if we're using your analogy, when one dude that just grinded his ass off, for perhaps months in some game to acquire the items and the levels that he has, can be, seen as someone who's respectable within the game, or people look up to him just like, by him just walking around the map, and just people around him look at it, wow, that guy really achieved something. And on the other hand, people can just buy stuff, with, like you mentioned, microtransactions and all the stuff. They can kind of bypass all of that effort. But here's this is a good segue actually into gaming NFTs, because this is like a good example of why people perceive some items as valuable, and why some, I guess, levels or resources within some game can be traded.
Sure. And again, I don't want to shed or shade or cast any bad light on any communities or Web3 in general. In fact, it is important to point out again in this conversation that Neo Tokyo initially offered access into the community at the highest level for free if you were willing to put in the work and do that initial trial. So having said that, that is done and over with. And if they offer, and they do offer opportunities, and they do offer contests. The most recent one was the fourth hand back in December of 2022. So I don't want to sit there and say that they don't offer opportunities. And I know that the founders of Neo Tokyo have been very explicit, as well as the community manager on Firestorm, in that you have to slave, not slave, but you have to work really hard to get into Neo Tokyo. You're either going to pay with the initial trials and the contests to get in. You may not pay, but you're going to pay with your time, or you're going to have to pay the extra money. So everyone, and it's fair. It's fair to say that, because you shouldn't just necessarily have a free ride. You should have to work to get into it. But as you just said, that creates kind of this value system, or this value of that particular tier, or the NFT that represents that access to that. But yes, this is a good segue into gaming. But before I jump into that, I said a lot. Do you have a response at all?
No, it's we are in agreement about that. Let's just leave it at that.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of topics to cover.
No, you're absolutely right. I'm sorry. We have opportunities to do that later. Bringing it back to the utility and NFTs. Now, we brought up the whole concept of gaming. Could you please take a moment and explain what the relationship between NFTs or digital collectibles have with gaming at this particular moment in time? This is the summer of 2023.
Yeah, now gaming as the utility for NFTs, this I think is where the party is truly at, to be honest. Because gaming actually solves a real world issue. NFTs within gaming solve a real world issue regarding decentralization and proof of ownership within games. These are two of the main core topics here. Now, let me just say that I acknowledge that this might be a bit of like me speaking out of an echo chamber, because I've been like for years listening and agreeing with like Becker, Aurelio, or Dr. JPEG and Johnny from Hustlepedia, but this can become a bit repetitive since like everyone is pushing this narrative. But I do think that gaming has the most potential to reach mainstream audiences.
Why?
And this is simply because NFTs are perfect for in-game integration. Like in terms of in-game items or skins, or just characters and avatars that you can own, or even like land plots within a certain metaverse, and besides, it's just the fact that most companies out there today that are focused on gaming want to keep monetization centralized.
Sure.
Like, you mentioned microtransactions and all this stuff. Plus, they can pull the plug anytime they want.
Of course.
Remove a certain item from your character, or even ban your whole account, And most of the games, especially like I mentioned in MMORPGs genre, They're opposed to the idea of exchanging game goods or resources or items or selling the entire account for real world money. And this new wave of gaming, it isn't opposed. The people just embrace that. And I think it's a bit better because, uh, again, NFTs are perfect for this because you also can have an ERC20 token or other cryptocurrencies that can function as fungible tokens or as a currency within the game. And it just creates this dynamic where people are doing it anyway, so why not just embrace it, you know? And I will say this, though. It's kind of a shame that currently the mainstream gamers are a bit repulsed by the idea of their skin being represented as a token on the blockchain. And I think this is due to the fact that most games that came out in the peak of the bull run um, were not only like unfinished or empty promises or just plain bad in terms of quality or gameplay. It's just that there were in fact lots of flat out scams or just slight cash grabs or somewhere on that spectrum, you know. And another thing that no one actually to this day made like into a stuff that you could use is the whole play to earn model, which many projects that are integrating it now actually have this Ponzinomics structure. But that being said, when these issues solve themselves, I guess, with time and innovation, I think the potential for integrating NFTs in games is just massive. And I do think it's going to take over the gaming industry, and it's going to happen a lot sooner than people think. Perhaps down the line, we even see a depegging of the rest of the crypto market from the gaming portion of it.
Again, my goal is not to push back, but I think it needs to be a part of the conversation. Right now, I'm looking at a lot of Web3 games. One example right now is Chrono Forge, and they are a member in the web in the Neo Tokyo community. And I highly encourage everyone to go and check out Chrono Forge on their website as they continue to develop and do your own research. But they are an example right now of a community where you can get items, characters, pets that are NFTs, right? And then you purchase them on a marketplace of your choice, whether it's Blur or OpenSea or whatever it may be. You utilize, or you will be able to utilize that NFT in the game. And I mean, you can. This goes on forever and ever. This is not going to be a podcast episode specifically about gaming, but the concept of utility in it. And the question then becomes, the question that I'm finally getting to is, in Web 2 games, this was previously quote unquote free digital content, right? These are items that once you've paid the initial game fee, you had access to these items just by grinding. But now you have the ability to purchase these components. Or if you acquire them in the game, you have the ability to sell these components. And I agree with that on a fundamental level because I was one of those guys who played World of Warcraft for years. Not in the sense like I wasn't like an Asmongold, right? I wasn't, I didn't live in Azeroth, but at the same time, I spent a lot, hours and hours of my time. And why couldn't I turn that time that I spend into it into something that I could theoretically sell? My concern, and again, I've talked too much here, but my concern is that we have this monetization of that time, whether it's grinding in the game or coming at it from the other angle and purchasing this NFT on a marketplace and bringing it into the game. My concern that, like microtransactions, this has just become a way for companies, Web3 companies and Web2 companies are starting to get into it, for them to just make money and potentially take advantage of the customer. And my question is, do you agree with that, or do you think this is a natural evolution?
Yeah. No, I would agree with it actually. Well, it can be both, actually. Like you mentioned, I think the whole idea of restricting real-world trading for digital assets is just wrong. Let me start there,
Okay.
because I think it stems from, like, I don't know, some a previous generation or more traditional values, or the belief that you can't make money from having fun, or at least, like, I remember in my upbringing, like, it was always you have to work hard and then perhaps you'll get money, and this vibe is really shifting when you see people like just making a career out of streaming
They
or
are.
making YouTube
Or
videos,
Twitch.
or
I mean,
yeah,
they are
yes,
making a living.
yeah, it's a huge industry. And I think the previous generation is opposed to people like getting paid for providing basically value through um, showing off their skills in game, or selling the time that they've put in. Is the time you put in when you grind something and you finally get a certain drop from slaying some monsters. That time is then like condensed into one item, and you can, uh, by selling it, you're actually like saying, okay, this is how much I value my time, or the grind that I've been through. And if someone wants to bypass all the grind, I am willing to part with my item for this and this amount, And I think this is empowering. Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree. I wholeheartedly agree, and I love. Again, you really said it well. For example, if someone is learning, like myself, Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine is a free software that helps someone make a video game. And if you're going to spend the time and the effort to learn that particular program, whether it's a video game or it is some particular software, and right now there's a lot of examples, whether it's AI or video games or just utility software. They then take that skill that they've learned, that effort that they've put in, and they create something that is tangible enough to be sold. In this case, non-fungible for digital collectibles. So I think that there is an argument to be made for gamers and streamers to basically take this effort, this skill, this time, and have a representation of it that has value to them, that someone else may also have value and they can obviously purchase. You said it very well, Flower, when you said that there is a whole maybe 75% of the rest of the world will see this and be like, dude, you're playing video games. How the heck can you sit there and say that that's how can you say that that's valuable?
It's already happening, It's been happening for a decade. And it's just weird how people don't see it as, like you mentioned, a natural progression. Because if you take a look at it, more and more people are spending more and more time in the metaverse, or in some game, or on their computers. The whole world is getting digitalized. And I do think that monetizing it shouldn't be an issue, or it shouldn't be this thing that people push back against. I really don't.
No, but people will, because it's new and it's different,
Yeah.
and there are issues. I mean, you cannot ignore the psychiatric, not want to say downfalls, but consequences of spending so much time involved in a virtual world. I think that people who do spend time playing games should be able to leverage that into a commodity that they can see some returns on for their time and their skill.
If we're talking from like a purely technological standpoint, I still think that gaming and NFTs bring more good than bad. Just like, of course, there will always be individuals on both extremes, but I remember watching some Jason Brink from Gala Games. He had the TED Talk where he passionately described how play to earn is allowing some individuals from countries that are not as strong, economically. And these individuals then get ahead by just spending their free time playing games, collecting resources, leveling up characters, or selling the in-game items. and then helping themselves financially. Because the economy within the game is one thing, but when you put it in the real world, there's a huge discrepancy between the country they live in and the rest of the world.
Sure.
So that's just the thing, within most games you have the ability to either earn a bit by being better than others, more skillful in a game, or just invest more time in it. And usually it's not the case in the overall world economy, where the location where you're born kind of dictates, unless of course there are always people who don't go by that rules, but in general, there's not an equal playing field, I feel like. And gaming kind of gives that power back to the people, especially with some concepts we mentioned, like decentralization, proof of ownership. But yeah, of course, this is not only specific to gaming. It's broad in the whole NFT space. Someone with drive and ambition, dedication, or like passion for the NFT space can use their wits and time and create a project, or perhaps just art that flourishes, and then people like it, and it shows the power of NFTs in general, I feel.
So that in itself is a utility, in my opinion. But it speaks to a larger concept. So you have all of these people, and again, I'm very passionate about this. I'm sorry if I talk too fast or talk too much about it. In many areas of my life, if you look at the timeline of my life, there have been many times where I've had nothing, living on peanut butter jelly sandwiches, and all I could afford, or in my free time, maybe it was all I could do to pull up a console and play a little video game, just because on one level it really did take me away from the reality of life.
Yeah, again, going back to something you said, which really it's food for thought, right? Perhaps one of the reasons that the NFT space currently is at the stage it's at is because a lot of founders or projects want to force monetization, and this is not the natural transition into it. Like, I firmly believe that the games have to be entertainment first. They have to be fun first before there is a healthy economy within them that's then be able to monetize. And I think this is where we got it wrong a bit, honestly. Like,
Okay.
collectively as people in the
Please go on.
Yeah, because people were trying to figure out all this like charts and the tokenomics and the distribution of tokens, or how the in-game economy would work, and they forgot to focus on the gameplay, the lore behind it, the story behind the characters. Just like, again, using RuneScape for example, it started as like a project from 2 or 3 brothers, and the map was small. It was just a passion of theirs, and I think we have to go back to our roots in this regard. I think Web3 gaming should flip on its head in a way, and just go back to that we are creating something that's fun first, that works in and of itself, and then out of that comes like a good balanced in-game economy, or the monetization of assets within it. I think people, in their chase of quick cash or their greed, failed to see this dynamic and kind of flipped it on its head. And yeah, in time it will, I think, balance out, because now the projects that are building in the bearer market, they're really here for the long term, right?
Yes.
They delayed their instant gratification of hype and marketing, and chose not to mint out in the bull, but chose to go back to the drawing board, chose to, just gather a few people who are working, like, not even getting paid that much, just working from the kindness of their heart, or because they're actually passionate about the project. And the communities that will weather this bear market will emerge stronger, I think, when the gaming does reach like its former levels or its prior glory.
I wholeheartedly agree with.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree with your assessment that it's great to start small, to have fun, and to let it grow organically, naturally, and with a community. There's also something to be said that can be challenging per se, simply because of what's already out there in the market and what you have to compete against. But a lot of that depends on you as a founder and what you're doing as well.
Another thing I would like to mention is you said that the barrier to entry for like just making up your own game or starting your project anywhere, like in Web 3 or Web 2, is kind of hard right now because yeah, the industry is huge. There's this large companies controlling most of it, and I even agree with the thing you said about. I played Warcraft 3 when it was a strategic game, and all these AAA games coming out now can't really beat that nostalgia when I had as a kid. I don't think I ever skipped the cutscene in Frozen Throne or something when I was first going through the campaign. There's really something magical about it. But I wanted to mention like that. I think that barrier to entry that you mentioned is going to dissolve due to AI. And yeah, this
Oh,
is
that's a whole nother conversation, bro.
yeah. I was just about to say it would probably require another call like this because it's huge. But let me just
Go
briefly
ahead, go ahead.
explain why I think that. Because if you have a progression, if you look how the internet itself progressed, it was text, then images, sound, video, it all followed this linear progression. And we're seeing this now hypercharged with AI. First, it was ChatGPT with just text prompts and it would generate like a story or an appropriate response. And now you have Midjourney that's making basically images that are indistinguishable from photographs. And in the next quarter, supposedly, people are working on sound and animation also, I imagine, isn't far away. And when you have these components, mass producing quality games, like even from one person, if he just puts his time at it, and prompts a few stuff and does it for like weeks or months, a AAA game isn't as far away with all the evolving technology. I think this is a huge game changer, but it's just a dubious speculation or like a half-assed prediction at this point. But I do think that in the following months or years, we'll see a lot of progression in this area as well.
I've seen this in the publishing world. Again, indie publishing, where you can self-publish. Basically, when it first came out back in the early 2000s, the whole concept was you didn't have to go through the big five publishers. If you wrote your story, you did your thing, you could put it out there on Amazon, and there finally was a marketplace that allowed you to bypass the gatekeepers. And I think in many respects this reflects Web3 in general, because Web3 allows you on many different levels to do a startup that has different reach with different utility that we've been discussing. You have a lot of people now who can produce or make a book. Just because someone can do something doesn't necessarily mean that they can do it well, even with AI and all of its utility and functions and capabilities, which is obviously changing week to week. It's a week to week narrative that you have to stay on top of nowadays. But I agree with you in that it's going to be or decrease the barrier of entry for many people, and it will allow them to do things they would not be able to otherwise do. What I'm saying is that there's going to be a sea of crap that's probably going to come out. Yeah. And it's being able to navigate that as a customer, as someone who's looking for something to be entertained with. We discussed some of the typical utilities that exist beyond art and collectibles for NFTs. We discussed emotional utility and kind of what that means. We discussed the concept of gaming and what involves in it. And we discussed token gating, and we discussed barriers to entry and how that can evolve. Is there some nuance, some small utility that you think is overlooked right now when it comes to NFTs slash digital collectibles that you may have seen in another, I don't know, company, another project, or that you've been thinking about yourself?
Yeah, it seems to me that no one has it figured out yet, you know? No. I'm excited how this technology develops in the following months and years and what people will come up with, but it's like NFTs are so early that no one actually created a coherent classification, right? So I'm always intrigued by all the attempts to cluster the niches within the NFT space together.
Okay.
And sometimes these categories overlap, you know, to some degree. There's PFP projects, there's music NFTs, gaming NFTs, there's purely art NFTs, or like Neo Tokyo membership NFTs. And some would say that there are this utility NFTs, you know, which is a sector of NFTs in and of themselves, which I can't quite agree that it's actually there right now.
Okay.
But I do feel it has the potential in the future to transcend all of this, or just like I mentioned in the beginning, there's this emotional utility or hype around it, and I do think that NFTs that can like integrate themselves into actual tangible goods and services and provide like daily value to holders are going to be these gems, you know, that people will really want to get their hands on in the future, especially if Web3 gets big. And you know, under this category would fall the things that I mentioned in the very beginning, like Neo Tokyo and Steadistech and all the stuff that's created by founders that are really on the grind and present every day and just trying to figure out how to give more and more value to holders. And it's not just like hanging out or just based on hype or speculation that something will come. But there's like a short description you can put on OpenSea, you know, this is what our project's about, this is what you get. And I'm waiting for a time where that in itself will be valuable or will justify the high floor it has for some collection. And I don't think this emerged yet. We've seen glimpses of it, you know, in the previous bull run, but now this bear market is a blessing in this regard because people are like, you know, let's figure out what really works. Let's flush shit out. Let's just put our hands together and like figure out ways to really make NFTs great. And it's kind of a movement within it that goes against the narrative that was there in the beginning,
Yes.
which was based on future airdrops or the potential promise of we'll build a AAA game. And you know, some of the founders then can't even figure international shipping for merch. You know, it's this discrepancy between the idea of what NFTs could be and the reality is now in this bear market really setting in. And I'm excited to see the space evolve with like a few individuals that really have their not only good ideas but their feet on the ground and can execute with like excellency. Yeah,
That was a great way to sum it up. I wholeheartedly agree. And the last thing that you said really hits home. It's good that people can have these conversations that we're having. It's good that people, not everyone, don't get me wrong. There's some people who are still going to ride that hype train till, you know, they run it into the wall. But to really question what is working, what is not working, find an answer, get not only the funding but the passion and the drive to follow through with that answer and then execute on it. It's you said it. It's really early. We haven't seen a lot of it. Some bigger companies like Amazon, Nike, they're starting to dip their toes into it. Maybe that will provide some examples. Maybe that will provide some initiative or some pressure on the smaller people, smaller projects that have been working to get their act together and to, you know, move forward even inside of a bear market. But really great points, all across the board. Listen, man, I'm not going to take any more of your time. This was huge. Everything you really do bring an amazing insight into this, and it's not hype. It is genuine. It is questioning the fundamentals about what works, what doesn't work, what is hype, what is scam. You do this for everyone who's listening or watching or however you're engaging this podcast. Flower here, he has a number of different shows or talks, Twitter spaces that he does. I'm going to make him reveal those right now. You should go listen to him and give his explanation. He does a lot of research on the current NFT market, digital collectible markets, and a lot of the insights that you received here today were from his skill, his work. So make sure that you take the time to reward him by go and listen to him. Where can we find you, Flower, in the Web3 world?
Yeah, I work with NT News. I write like 2 or 3 articles per week. Sometimes it's just sharing my thoughts on the overall landscape of NFTs. Sometimes it's really like a specific research for some project that's upcoming or has been around for a while. Then we also have our Mondays show. Every Monday we do an NFT market overview with the regular group over at Twitter Spaces. And yeah, we also started like a newsletter, which is a bi-weekly release. Now you can subscribe at Neo Tokyo. And then I'm also on the writing team for developing lore inside the Citadel. So it will take some time before it all rolls out, but we have some good stuff cooking over there as well in the fictional world. So yeah, stay tuned.
Definitely. Once again, thank you very much for taking the time and putting up with the technical difficulties and all the scheduling. So we're very grateful that you could make it today. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, it was great. An honor, sir. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the interview, and I especially want to thank Flower for his insights here and from Neo Tokyo. Don't forget to like and subscribe the podcast and the video, and please leave reviews for wherever you listen, whether it's on YouTube or anywhere else. I would suggest and advise that you continue to pay attention because there will be opportunities and benefits offered to many prior to November 15th, and that's all I'm going to say about that. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.